Um, so my name is Jeff, and um, I grew up when I was 3 years old. My dad nicknamed me Buzz, and I've gone by that my whole life. Family still calls me that, close friends. I recently started going by my real name for a spiritual reason, um, and it just has to do with that Buzz has been keeping Jeffrey invisible, and Jeffrey's the one who was wounded. And so Tamara knows me as Buzz. Hey, you can call me Buzz if you want, that's fine. My intent is what is important. I want to identify with Jeff. Um, and it's helped with a lot of the inner child work that I've done, as far as inner dialogue. Self-compassion is a big one, Jesus. And so anyway, that's the clarity on that. Jeff, Buzz, whatever, spell my name right, spell it wrong, I don't care anymore. It's just kind of, but that's what it is. And so I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm really thrilled. I have a lot of gratitude. I always, early on in AA meetings, I would always kind of question, it's like, do they really mean that? Are they just saying that to sound good? Just saying that because that's what they're supposed to say, that kind of thing. And the reality is no. I actually reached out to Tamara and I asked if I could do this because this is so incredibly healing for me. And the biggest piece is that one tough lesson I've learned is that no one's story is better or worse. No one's story is good or bad. It's just an is. It's the self-judgment that we put on the storyline. And, I don't want anyone else to have to suffer, and I don't want anyone else to have to experience what I have. And I say that, and that's not a sob story or sob comment. It's my internal conflict, and that's okay. I don't know what someone else's internal conflict is, and I just know that if I can help somebody else, then I've done my job. So anyway, with that, I'm very, very grateful to be here. So thank you all for having me. Seriously, seriously. So I'm going to start off. I have had Tourette syndrome since I was 3. That was where the onset of symptoms was, and I have now in my recovery understood that this is not something I was born with. This is something I created at about 14 years old as a self-preservation mechanism due to my external environment. This is something that my nervous system created in order to get through. And the getting through or what was going on is not the important part. The important part is, okay, so I'm a sensitive Sally. I've always been a highly sensitive individual. And I've torn myself to fucking pieces my whole life because of that. Because I've somehow distinguished, oh, that's a lack of masculinity. I have a lot of raw power that if I channel that correctly, I can help other people with that. And so I've always confused that. And the child who gets spanked, hit with, well, I got hit with a freaking stick, but when you're being reprimanded or for consequences, that could happen all the time. But it's the child who gets this, and that screws them up in their adulthood. That it's not the getting hit, and I mean, it may be for somebody, but it's that shaming, it's that toxic shame that you're doing something wrong, and all that kind of stuff. And that could screw up a kid who never gets spanked, more so than he or she knows what to do with. And so that's the difference, and that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, is that there's not good or bad, man. People have different sensitivity levels. They have different nervous systems. They have different, we're all built the same, but you know what I mean? Like, we respond to our external environments differently. And it's like me trying to say, oh man, Zoloft works great for me. It's absolutely going to work great for you. You know? So anyway, with all of that, so onset of Tourette's at 3, and that's the pretty much biggest piece of trauma for me. And it's not the Tourette's. It's not that. It's all the toxic shame and the messages that were delivered because of it. And so, as I'm going, my theme of all of this talk is the mind. The mind does not remember, but my body does. And what I mean by that is that I've learned my body, my cellular memory, remembers stuff. So when my external environment creates a trigger that I have no control over, life happens on life's terms, my body gets activated before my mind does, before my mind even follows suit. Next thing I know, I'm reacting and not responding. And so I'm not going to go into war stories. I'm not going to go into a lot of life, a lot of my storyline per se, because I don't feel that it's so pertinent, but I am going to give certain stories to then exemplify further points. And so the one story, and because this is my foundation, and I don't really have a need so much anymore to tell that, which is outstanding because that tells me that I'm moving forward. We didn't know about the Tourette's until about, I was 8 years old when I got diagnosed, but in '88, nobody knew a freaking thing about it. Nobody knew anything about ADHD, And so I was 5 years old, and I was an extremely hyperactive kid, but that times 10. That's where the name Buzz came from. And I guess I was misbehaving, I don't know, and the timer was a big thing in my house. It was just, anyway, so long story short, I guess there was this thing about, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go live so-and-so, whatever, but it was 5, right? And I guess at some point, my mom decided to, quote-unquote, kick me out, which, yes, I know logically it was a scare tactic, but children don't internalize through intellect. They internalize through here. And that's why we attach as children to messages, and then in our adult lives, oh man, I've got this diagnosis, and I'm all chemically whacked out, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you're operating out of these old wounds that are constantly getting triggered, etc. And so anyway, she's going to kick me out, and she says, I'm setting the timer for half an hour. You have half an hour to go upstairs. I'm going to get the suitcase. You put everything you have in there, your toys, whatever, blah, 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 whatever you want to take. When that timer goes off, if you don't have whatever, you have to go. So, and I remember all of it very clearly. I remember where the dresser was, what room I was in, where I was, and putting stuff in. Timer goes off. I don't have everything because I had the attention span of a fish. And so, yeah. I'm like, I teach guitar to this 11-year-old, and she has a better attention span than I do as an adult man. But anyway, moving on. So I'm packing all this stuff, and timer goes off, don't have everything. She says, come down, you got to leave. And the suitcase was bigger than I was. And so we go outside, and my dad is in the garage, and he's not in a good mood. He's doing his thing at his workbench, whatever. And so I couldn't pull the suitcase, so they get my wagon, and they put it in the wagon so I could pull it. And I remember they told me to leave, and I walk out, and the garage door starts coming down, and I leave the wagon to where it would hit it, and then they just yell at me to basically, just say, you better not let the garage door hit that, blah, 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 if it breaks, whatever. And then I remember just this feeling of like, is this really happening? Like, this can't be real. And so I pull the thing out and the garage door comes down. Now keep in mind, so this is late October, it was nighttime. And the backyards it's like house, driveway, backyard, driveway, house. And the people who lived behind us was my brother's best friend. And so the garage door comes down, and I didn't know where to go, so I was just going to go to their house. And their lights were all off, and I think they maybe had a motion sensor or something with the light. And I get through the backyard to their driveway, and then I come up with this brilliant idea, my wonderful alcoholic thinking. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go ask for another chance, and if they say no, I'm going to cuss them out and drag my wagon all over the laundry bed, all over the flower bed, really get them, right? And so I go up to the door, and my mom, she was just like, well, why should I? And just very cold. And my mom, that's a whole nother thing. But just there was no compassion. And so anyway, she's like, well, we're just gonna, you'll have to ask your father. So we go in there anyway, and I ask him, and so then he, yells at me, whatever, blah, 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 this and that, and then we come inside, and then I lay my jacket over the top of the couch, and, he's like, hang your coat up, you're not doing a very good job so far. And then he's like, go to bed. And so now my entire life I've always remembered that, but I didn't actually have any emotion around that until I was 24 years old, came out of nowhere. And the thing is, I discounted that story up until I was about 34. Because, oh man, I didn't get physically beaten by my stepdad. You know what I mean? I didn't get, this massive, singular, devastating trauma that was happening that to the outer world, oh yeah, I have compassion for you. And I was terrified that if I talked about it, other than in therapy, well, actually, no, that's not even true, not even then, that it would be discounted. That it would be like, oh, well, dude, move on. That would have devastated me. And it wasn't until I was 34, talked about it in therapy, and she's like, well, my nephew's now almost 14, but he was 6 at the time. She's like, okay, well, do you remember when he was 5? I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, well, tell me about him. He seems what you've talked about very much like you. I was like, yeah, he's the sweetest little boy. He's really sensitive, he thinks about other people. But she's like, yeah, once again, sounds like you. And I was like, okay. And she's like, so you remember him? I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, yeah, see, and that's the thing. Anyway, she's like, could you imagine doing that to him? And that was the first time that I was able to get a real perspective on what that was. And that's the thing. It doesn't. I always had all these hang-ups about, oh man, well, look at this person's life, man, they had so much worse, and blah, blah, blah. And you know what? That's a bunch of shit. All that is a way for me to discount and create an excuse for me to not deal with and or feel the crap that I have going on, or to deal with or feel the wound that I have. And that is what I mean, man. No one's story is better or worse when you really get down to the core of it. Because it's, hey, my life is good, I'm happy, I function, but you know what? I'm not functioning. I am now, but I'm saying I am not functioning. And so what is going on and why? So I think in therapy, I spent probably a good couple years just learning to not discount the crap. And over the course of my recovery this time, it's like little things pop up. And I'm like, well, yeah, I remember that, but Jesus, I had no idea how greatly this little tiny thing impacted me. And in just that. But so now with that story, moving on from that, the reason why that was such a big deal is because that got reinforced up until I was 22 years old. And the theme of that is getting pushed out against my will, getting forced away, which drove in the message of, if you don't behave, if you don't control this thing that is uncontrollable, if you don't get through school, if you don't function, if you essentially don't operate like, so quote unquote, a normal person, you're gonna get kicked out. You're not lovable. You're a piece of shit. And no, I was not told you're not lovable because of this. I was not told you're a piece of shit because of this. However, through the course, and I mean, dude, I've got notepads of shit. I mean, I would be here 4 hours. You know what I mean? My storyline's not important. It is just that if I were to go over every little thing is why, how and why this theme was reinforced, everything was a threat. There was always this outside perceived threat of, you are going to be taken away or forced away if you do not behave. So, since then, I have been suppressing and harnessing and controlling my nervous system. And as I got older, getting chased by a helicopter and police and going to a psych ward when I'm 14 and getting put in jail against my will for my mother for some stupid shit. All these things, I did this. And I've lived my entire life like that. And I'm now, and I mean, Jesus Christ, alcohol was the only thing that, cool. You know, I didn't need alcohol to be social. I'm very extroverted. I don't have any problem talking to strangers, talking to people. I don't have any trouble giving another grown man a platonic hug. You know what I mean? Just like but it relaxed my nervous system. It gave me an opportunity to be able to say, man, I'm really okay with crying right now. Or I'm really okay with being hyperactive. And the worst part of it is just now, I'm coming into buzz again. And what I mean by that is, Buzz was this hyperactive, beautiful child who just loved life, had a raw energy. He didn't wake up in the morning, man, God, fuck, I gotta get some coffee. Oh man, now that I've had coffee, I'm craving a cigarette. Oh man, I'm uncomfortable with myself at nighttime coming home after work. Man, I need to pour alcohol on that. Children don't do that. They have a rawness for life. They get up and it's like their mind is, it is a sunny day or a rainy day. And what am I gonna do? And really the question is, what am I not gonna do? And I am reconnecting with that in my life now. And I want to eventually help teach adults how to reconnect with that raw power. Because we get consumed in this cynical world that we live in. It's like, oh, you need to grow up. You need to, stop doing this. The shoulds and the shouldn'ts, and I could should on myself all day. And the thing is well, it's not about being childish. It's about being childlike. It's reconnecting with that heart center. And when you do that, when I do that, the moments that I do that, I step into this raw power. And what I mean by raw power is just, I have an authenticity for life again. I become who I am but see, that's the thing, is that on the good days, on my best days, when I step back into the hyperactivity, and yesterday I was totally manic, but I went with it. And I'm not even kidding. It was like dealing with a freaking 5-year-old. And I'm with a friend of mine. Hey, what are you doing? She's on the phone. Hey, pay attention to me. Hey, what are you doing? And I'm not even kidding. Very literally. And so, but you know what? Buzz got shamed for that. And so I shut Buzz down. And really, it wasn't Buzz at all. Buzz was the protector of Jeffrey who got wounded. And Jeffrey shut down. Okay? And I lost that raw desire for life. I lost that raw desire just to be alive. And, I think that now, my motive is just really, okay, what do I have to do each day to just be okay being seen? Allowing myself to have tics. And you know what? All the little facial things, blah, 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 all that's just suppression of bigger tics. When I was a kid, there was, in church, cursing tics out loud. Everybody's like, you're in church and it's quiet and you hear the wood on the pews move. You know that sound? That, kind of thing. And then everybody turns around to look. And, I would have such violent neck twitches, I'd get whiplash in my neck. And this one's funny, but, I'd walk out of a room, like that doorknob, close the door behind me, left hand is on the knob. I'd walk all the way to where that, just walked over here. And then I'd have to come all the way back and touch the doorknob with my other hand. And what's interesting is, like, these kids these days, I've got so many friends who have kids, and they all have tics. They've all got a lot of this stuff going on. And, which tells me further that, as I go back to the beginning, I created the Tourette's. It's a CPTSD, for lack of better words, mechanism, okay? Complex PTSD, childhood PTSD. And so what now I'm harnessing in on is when I have tics, what that is, my body, to an external trigger, is essentially mimicking whatever was going on in my nervous system when I was young, as that trigger was, as the external environment was happening. And so I'm really looking at it with this whole new level of self-awareness. However, here's the thing. Even by myself, the other day I had some really loud, just like high-pitched tic, because I let myself have it. That bam, just started crying. And that's because on some subconscious level, it's still registering. Oh, no, you're going out of your survival. You just took all your shield down. And man, that's gonna be a lifetime, the rest of my life, to work on that, and that's okay. But that's what I mean. It's like that, it is so strong, so deeply embedded with me, that if I let this be seen, if I let it out, if I bark at people, and if I, just whatever it is, and I'll have to go through some of the same ridicule. I'll have to go through all the self-explaining. I'll have to go through all of the justifying, whatever it is. And it's caused problems in jobs, I don't have to, but I choose to give my boss, once I get to know them, some information so they know. Because it's not just tics, it's associated behavior. And there's a fine line, and it becomes very difficult to understand what exactly is what. And so, anyway, I'm going to move on from all of that. Um, very, very into music at a very young age. Michael Jackson, Beat It was where I was at. Yeah, I'm a musician. I've been playing music for about 30 years. And I'm an alcoholic. I'm sober. I live a sober lifestyle. I would say that trauma is like paper cuts. And I mistaked, that's part of the discounting, is that you can have one major singular devastating trauma happen to you at a young age that, and then in my world, I had what I call trauma paper cuts. It's basically consistent, that's the key word. Consistent little traumas happen over and over and over and over, all exasperating the same theme. And, well, paper cuts hurt. And if you have about 5 million of those on your body, how do you think you would feel? Essentially, the storyline is not important. That adds up to the same thing. It's the same equivalent to having one singular major trauma happen to you. And, there was sexual abuse that I can't remember. I've done a lot of work on it, but that's what I mean, is that in the last 3 years, that's been coming up. And piece by piece by piece, it's showing itself. But that's what I meant by the mind does not remember, but the body does. Okay? And, well, why am I uncomfortable in this intimate situation? I'm a man. Like, I'm supposed to be all about this or all about that, and it's a bunch of crap, But it's really realizing, I get activated. But now that I have the information around things, I can kind of play with it like I'm a science project. And, that stuff is really important because in my world, all I do is beat the shit out of myself over and over and over. If I have a conflict with somebody else and whatever else, when I leave that situation, all I'm doing, what did I do? What can I do to be better? And the other biggest piece, some bullet points, are that when I got diagnosed with Tourette's at 8, the doctor overdosed me on medication. He gave me haloperidol, which is used to treat schizophrenia and Tourette's, but he gave me an adult dosage. My tongue swelled up. My parents thought, well, if your child's tongue swells up. I had, for about 2 weeks, these symptoms, very physical symptoms, but the biggest things were with my tongue. That was the primary one. There were others. I got taken out of school early because it happened in class. That was one of those things. 2 years ago, I'm in the dentist chair, and she's poking around, and my tongue, I moved it up to the corner of my mouth so she could clean my teeth. Started crying, literally in the dentist chair. And as she was dabbing the crap off my mouth, then she was dabbed the tears, which I thought was sweet. But the thing is that was the first symptom. I'm sitting in class, elementary school. You have to be silent, all those, the rules are strict, whatever. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my tongue darts up to the back corner of my mouth. And I couldn't control it. And so, and that's what I mean. It's like I'm in the dentist chair and there's a lot of unresolved stuff, a lot of emotional crap that has been stored. And I was like, and that was one of those things. I didn't lose my mind over it. However, wow, that affected me a whole lot more than I ever realized. And that shit lives in our bodies. And kind of bouncing around, all that emotional garbage is what creates physical manifestations of illness in our bodies, okay? Every bit of pain that I have in my neck, in my shoulders, all the tightness, I don't look at it like, oh, I just have pain and tightness in my neck. I mean, yeah, I've got some work injuries. However, it's interesting that when I am relaxed, when I don't have, when I'm just not in a place of where stuff is activated, it's interesting my body doesn't hurt. It's interesting that when I've been ungodly depressed and I'm contemplating taking my life, because that comes and goes continually, and it has since I was 12. It's interesting that, wow, all of a sudden the depression goes away when I'm not self-shaming. When I ask myself the question, why am I tearing myself to shreds? And over what? And every single time, 10 times out of 10, it comes down to that I've been activated, I don't know it, this could have been lasting for 2 weeks, and I am self-hating. I'm self-shaming and tearing myself down, and it could be because there's something that got activated because I feel like a failure, and that comes from some place that wasn't mine. It could be for any whatever reason, but when I get to the core of it and I'm like, okay, what can I do to love myself? So a better example would be, I'm at work, this is going on, I'm taking a nap, I get out of my nap, clock back in. All of a sudden, this person has this task for me to do, and I've got to be on point. They have a time limit, it's got to get done right in this specific time, I've got to do all this time management. Ooh, self-sufficiency. I've got to do this for myself, and I've got to make it happen, and then I succeed and make it happen. Small thing, not a big deal, just at work, typical day, right? All of a sudden, I have self-purpose. I have something that tells myself that I just succeeded with, being able to be self-sufficient and tackle a task, but do it well and do it without stress. Oh, wait, so coming back, it's interesting. Now my depression is gone. Why, right? And I will tell you, for me, that having this sense of purpose in my life, hence being here. When I called tomorrow, I was in a really bad headspace. And I asked to be here to help myself. And that comes back to the gratitude piece, is that everything is a manifestation of something. I do not believe depression to be a real thing. Now, hold on with that. Yes, it absolutely is a real manifestation of something else. But at the core, it is because I hate who I am. And on the days that I love who I am, or that I can show myself compassion, is the other biggest piece. Because I've never let myself have any room to breathe. And why? Because how can I heal from something if the perpetrator sits next to me, if they go to sleep with me, if they wake up with me, go to the bathroom, shower? I mean, I'm trimming my nails and they're sitting there, right? And what I mean by that is, when I have tics and loud ones, on a subconscious level, it registers, you are not going to survive if you allow this to happen. You're going to get kicked out. And a child internalizes that message as, oh my God, I'm going to die. A child at 5 does not have a cerebral cortex developed in their brain yet, which processes learning, processes emotions, processes problem solving. They don't have the capability for that. So they freeze. 5-year-old doesn't even have the ability to go into fight or flight. They freeze. And when you're forced to operate in the mindset of an adult at that age, it locks you up. Well, I'm sorry, not you. It locked me up, okay? And train of thought. And shit. I was getting deep. What was the last thing I said?
Cerebral cortex.
Thank you.
The enemy sitting next to you.
Yes, thank you, perfect, thank you, yes, thank you all. So anyway, with those things, if I had this one major trauma happen, let's say there was major abuse from this person sitting next to me. Happens. It's out in the open. But it's talked about. But they never leave my side. They never, ever leave my side. They're awake, but they just sit there in this, staring forward, like they're not even there, like they're a zombie, the Walking Dead, except they don't try to eat you. Okay? It's just they go to sleep with you, anything and everything you could possibly imagine. Every slight movement over here, slight movement over here. How would someone heal from that trauma if that perpetrator never, ever left their side? And so that's my analogy on how I've tried to talk to myself with compassion, in the sense of, how can I change my inner dialogue? How can I take my hands around my throat, away from my throat, and allow myself to become more at peace with self-acceptance, with having tics, with allowing myself to be seen, with allowing that to, just to be my authentic self, because it doesn't matter. And that's been the question: how do I heal from the wounds of it, from the internal messages that I internalized? That was kind of redundant, but that's all right. But how do I heal from that when it never goes away? When it wrecks my sleep. I have tics in my sleep. My nervous system is in fight or flight all the time. And so I'm doing extensive work all the time to relax. It's like, dude, just fucking breathe. Like, it's okay. Really, it's okay. I promise, And it's like, but it's just wound up. Like, all the time. So, it's just like, that's all. Oh, look at that, everyone. It's exactly what I need is caffeine right now, right? Okay, hold on.
There we go.
But I'm not even kidding. That really is what I tell myself. It's like, so I do practice limiting caffeine and things like this, okay? But that's been it. How do I heal? How do I get through it? And the thing is like, it really is, man, the individual self. Recovery is black and white. It is generalized to the masses to get us all better. However, recovery for me is still individual. My recovery is in a bunch of building blocks and a bunch of pieces. It's this. My emphasis is mental health, okay? But AA is part of my recovery, because I can't be here right now if I'm not sober. And I can't be here I can't be here for me if I'm not sober. And the beautiful thing of that is, like, I want to be sober for me today. I want, it's like, I live a better life, and I feel my feelings. And that, and it's interesting that there was one thing about feelings, is that inner conflict is very simple. But it feels ungodly complex and convoluted and conflicted. And what I've come to realize is that I don't want to feel what I'm feeling. I don't want to feel the core. I don't want to feel the wound. And so I start analyzing. I start breaking apart. I start dissecting. I start trying to figure it out, figure life out, right? And there's nothing to figure out. There's no the conflict gets created because I don't want to feel the core, singular, or maybe to feel, whatever. I don't want to feel the feelings. Every time I'm driving and I get pissed off at someone else and I'm doing this because, oh, you didn't use a turn signal, whatever. Whatever it is that I get angry at, I am angry at you. Right? At you. I'm projecting my shit onto somebody else. And every time I'm able to go within and feel what it really is, 10 times out of 10, I'm having a bad day because
I'm hating myself right now. And that's the crazy thing about it, is the external trigger. I have no idea what it is. It could be, it could be something that I will never have any awareness of. But what I mean is that by doing that, I can step back from the situation and realize, wow, this absolutely has nothing to do with anybody else or anything else. This is a matter of self-love and a lack of self-acceptance. And a bigger piece is a lack of self-compassion. That is so huge, so huge. You know, and it's interesting, like, you know, I have attempted suicide a few times, and I don't broadcast that lightly. Actually, I don't really broadcast it at all. But the reason I bring that up is I did that, okay? And I'm in the hospital the next day, and, you know, in a psych ward, and she comes in to, you know, redress my wrist, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I look down when she pulls the bandage off, and I start crying, and just this, like, how could I do this to myself? So where's the balance? You know what I mean? There's like this dual-sided thing. So apparently, if I have those feelings and that strong of an emotion, that little piece, how could I do this to myself? And we all have it. We all have that there. Okay? And that is the rawness and the self-love that I want to tap back into, because life doesn't, there's nothing to life other than we're here for two reasons: to learn how to love ourselves unconditionally and to learn how to love other people unconditionally. And the more that I have accepted myself, the more that I have trusted myself, you know, the lighter I become. Man, I can feel it, but I don't have as much tension in my neck and shoulders, and, you know, all right, fine, okay, just do all this, whatever, you know. And the bigger thing is like, I found people end up valuing who I am because of being more free with who I am, you know. And it's really, it's crazy. And it's like I was telling someone else the other day, like, people respect honesty, even if they don't want to hear it. Even if they are the one getting broken up with, say, for example. They respect honesty. They may act out, they may react in lieu of responding, but at the end of the day, they still respect being told the point-blank, honest truth of why they're getting broken up with. You know, and that's just one example, but how are we doing on time? Well, I mean, I've got a timer, but I'm still just,
about 5 minutes.
okay, all right, cool. And, you know, the other awesome thing, you all, is that I've used about not even a fourth of my notes, which is terrific. Actually, with 2 notepads, no, I've not even done a fourth. And so, gone with the flow. So I accomplished my goal today, which is great. That's my jam. What was that?
Breaking the rules.
No, it's, so I'm gonna move forward a little bit. The biggest crux of my addiction for me has been lack of connectedness. I don't necessarily agree, for me, with, oh, isolation is bad, blah, blah, blah. There is an element of, I need time to myself. I need to be able to participate in self-care. But there's a big difference. There's a vast difference. This is creating connectedness. This is why I go to AA meetings, because it's about, when I do that, it's not even about giving love. It's that I'm allowing myself to receive love, and that is huge. I mean, there's these little itty bitty things that I've come across up to now that I had so ass backwards, and it's not even that I'm afraid to be seen with the tics, right? It's about when I choose to fully step into self-acceptance and I'm being seen, the fear is actually about not being seen. Because as a child, I was not seen And children are innately their authentic self. And that was something that was so profound to me for me to understand. Is this whole time I'm thinking I'm afraid of, you know, whatever it is, you know, just, oh, you know, you've got all this shit going on with your body and you're making noise and cursing and whatever else. No, it's about not being seen. And, you know, I put a lot of emphasis on inner child work because everything for me has come back down to these core wounds. It completely, that is what has created the mold of who I am as a man. And has anybody heard the phrase, give me a child to the age of 7 and I'll show you the man or woman? And what that means is that in the first 7 years of our lives, we have all our conditioning from parents, authority figures, siblings, school teachers, whoever. And by 7 years old, we have all our programming. Let's hope it's positive. Usually it's not. And then we operate from that programming that we now have at that age. And that is who we become as an adult. And so what I'm doing now, I did them this morning, positive affirmations. I am reprogramming the inner dialogue of I'm a piece of shit because I can't control this thing that's not controllable. Or I'm not lovable because I can't control something that's not controllable. And I'm reprogramming. I'm lovable. And I am forgiving myself for things that were never my fault. And by doing that, I by default am forgiving, you know, essentially people who created the harm, whether it was direct or indirect. And reprogramming is so incredibly important. And it sounds silly as shit, and I've been doing it for years, and I will tell you, for the longest time, listening to, I am wonderful. I am beautiful. I am, you know, whatever it is, it's just I am statements. And now I wake up in the morning and I say it with it. And it really, really, what the thing I'll wrap up with is that when we have the original programming and we have an external trigger, life happens on life's terms, okay? My default is to go to that old programming that I had that says the old storyline that wasn't even my story to begin with. It was given to me, okay? And it's not who I am. And it would, I go to that old programming of I'm worthless. I'm not any good. You know, blah, 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 blah. But with the affirmations and putting in new programming, eventually, when an external life trigger happens, life happens on life's terms, I go to the new programming. My body registers, but then it's like, wait a minute, when my mind follows suit to the activation of my body, wait a minute, what the fuck's wrong with me? I'm actually good. I'm happy. Something happened the other day, and I could not believe it. I told my counselor, I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, this happened, and I was like, well, wait a minute, dude. I don't want to destroy myself. You know, and I mean, those are real, and it's not to sound dramatic, that's a real reality for me. And reprogramming my mind and changing the inner dialogue of how I talk to myself, treating myself with compassion like I would treat someone else those have been the biggest game changers for me. And you know what? I work on this shit every single day, and I will the rest of my life. And I am not any different than anybody. And so I will just say that, like I said, I am so incredibly thrilled that I got to come in here and talk to you all today. And thank you for allowing me to heal. And thank you for letting me into your space and share my energy with you. So thanks a lot.